I'd like to start things off by thanking Steve Orenberg and Jeff Bell for joining today. Hopefully I can do them justice when I give them a brief intro, and we'll kick things off by, I'll kick things off by telling a little bit about Steve Orenberg and Jeff Bell, and then going into a line of questions that'll help shed some light into their experience and have them impart some wisdom upon everybody today. So starting off, I'd like to start off with Jeff. I've known Jeff for a number of years now, back from my early days in headhunting, but Jeff has an incredible background in marketing across large corporations ranging from Daimler, Chrysler to Microsoft. At Microsoft, he was the CVP of Global Marketing for Xbox and Windows Online Gaming, and really helped create and shape the vision for what is now not just a gaming device, but a real piece of people's lives as a media and home entertainment device. More recently, he's been a partner at NCT Ventures, and is now back in the startup space with a company in the collaborative consumption space, and also as an SVP at MXM, which serves as a customer engagement agency that provides marketing services for some of the largest brands in America and globally. And Steve Orenberg, an incredible. So obviously Jeff has that background in the consumer side, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Steve Orenberg on the enterprise side, who has an incredible background, and also consumer side with online with antivirus security. Steve Orenberg, who recently was most recently the president of Kaspersky Lab North America, as well as the chief sales officer. And there he took Kaspersky Lab, an incredible story, from not even having any shelf space here in the US market in an already crowded marketplace in antivirus, and was able to make this company into a powerful player in the antivirus space, and really launch the business here in North America and Europe. And I think he has some great advice and experience to share with taking your company essentially from a startup with no shelf space to becoming a household brand name in a space as competitive as antivirus software. So I hope I've done you guys justice. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like for me to add, but maybe we can kick things off with our questions now. As I mentioned, these two presenters have an incredible background from operating in large businesses to startups, and I would love to just hear from them. Jeff and then Steve, can you give an example of a product or service or business that you took from perhaps an idea or early stage and really brought that to the commercial market, and what were the steps that you took to take it from that early stage to commercialization?
Super, I'll kick off. NCT Ventures was really started in 2008 when I left Microsoft, and since its founding, we've invested in a number of different areas, primarily in marketing and media, in business to consumer, web-based businesses. We've had 4 businesses that we have exited since 2008. The first one is Driver Side, which we sold to Advanced Auto Parts. Driver Side looked at a problem. This is going to be a common theme for my comments this morning. They solved a problem, and problem identification is key. What problem is it that you're trying to solve? In their case, they know that people who own automobiles fundamentally feel ignorant and ill-informed, ill-prepared when they need to have service and repairs done on their automobile. Don't trust dealers, don't trust third parties. And Driver Side was a platform where they could enter in information about their automobile and receive both more information and support around service and repairs, as well as a competitive reverse Dutch auction for people to bid against things they needed to have done. And it ended up being a very robust CRM platform to be able to manage relationships between not so much the OEMs, but really third parties like Jiffy Lube or Chevron, Auto Centers, etc. Second example I would give you is Clear Sailing. Clear Sailing we sold to eBay 2 years ago, and it is an advertising analytics platform. Again, the problem that it set about trying to solve is that Google gets a lot of money because it controls the last click. They're paid when people search for a term and then click on an advert and then go to a website and transact. The question is, what are people doing before the last click? how many different display advertisements are they exposed to, how many different paid and natural searches are they conducting, and how can we get visibility into what one might call the purchase path or even the abandonment path. And clear sailing by using pixel code on the e-commerce websites, whether it's Dick's Sporting Goods or Toys R Us, they would be able to look past that last click and into what people were exposed to and create basically a cross-tabulation of both messaging as well as media that was driving people towards conversion on site, and then by using an advanced algorithm be able to calculate what would be an abandonment path, what things were not succeeding in terms of the money and how it was being spent. This general area is called attribution management. How do you attribute value to people that are introducing you to customers, then influencing customers, and then closing customers. Let me stop there. There are two others we can talk about if we have time, but those two probably are representative of the kind of work that we do in venture.
Yeah, so that's a great point. I really enjoyed your point about problem identification, a point that a lot of people often miss. Now, Steve, same question to you.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I've been in a different space than Jeff. To answer your question about taking an idea to market, in the security industry, which I've been in for close to 20 years, Richard had referred to my past company as an antivirus. And the reality is that that particular industry is extremely dynamic and literally changes on the fly as far as the new types of threats that are out there. So one thing that I was heavily involved with during my time at Kaspersky was figuring out ways to protect businesses and consumers from emerging threats. 10 years ago, mobile wasn't an issue. So we had to come up and really create new markets and education for the market as far as, let's say, mobile devices, as far as transaction processing when you're doing online banking. So it's really not quite coming up with an idea in a blue ocean type of category, but really almost consistently keeping the pulse on the market so that it's not a question of what the requirements of the market are today, but knowing what the requirements are going to be tomorrow and trying to get ahead of the game on competition.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, so moving on from there, Steve, you're talking about the security space, and Jeff, you were in a lot of industries that were exposed to a lot of competition, gaming, for example. How did you differentiate your respective businesses in a competitive industry like this? Jeff, for you, it's Sony, Nintendo, Sega, some major players. Steve, I mean, you're up against Norton, McAfee, some huge players in your respective spaces. How did you differentiate yourself from these guys?
So I'll use the example, I guess, of Xbox. For something that's established as opposed to a startup, it's not dissimilar in terms of the type of analysis that you need to do. You need to be realistic and honest about your strengths and your weaknesses. When I joined the Xbox team, Xbox had a reputation as being very black, very dark, very much a shooter box, meaning it was oriented towards violent video games, very young oriented, very white male oriented, and so that's what we owned. And I have a simple idea. Started when I was leading Jeep as a brand, or any other brand, Xbox included. You want to maintain the core, but then you want to expand to the masses. It's very difficult to simply say, I don't like who I am and I'm going to change radically to something else. It makes more sense to understand that even what you may be, if it's not everything you want it to be, what are some of the positive truths to maintain authenticity as you try to evolve to something else? we knew that we wanted to become more approachable, but we weren't going to suddenly flip overnight and become like the Nintendo Wii, which was extraordinarily, young and open and family-oriented. But we did have to build a path, and evolution in this regard is much better than revolution. So we looked at, what do people do with these gaming devices? And you sort of gave a little bit of the insight. Just within gaming space, we just indexed, very poorly in sports. We indexed very poorly in the music category, both karaoke as well as Guitar Hero at the time. And then we knew going down the line, some of the fantasy role-playing and some of the, I'll call it, children's games like Mario Kart, etc., we did very, very poorly. So we just looked at that ranking, and then we set out to take them on sequentially, with the intention probably of if we succeeded with improving in sports, and we did great, obviously, in shooting games. We didn't have to do much there, and we improved in music. We may never even get to some of the fantasy games or the children's games. And that's what we went about doing. So, approaching EA Sports, doing much better with Madden Football, going after FIFA Soccer for Europe and for Asia. Then we did launch a karaoke game. We went to Activision, and we were able to steal Guitar Hero as an exclusive away from Sony. We underwrote the development of hardware for a competing product called Rock Band, where we had an exclusive globally for 6 months and for a year in Europe and Asia. And just executing against those areas where we knew we were weak, but we felt we could be strong, started to open up people's attitudes and experiences on Xbox. The second part was we knew we had Xbox Live, which originally was launched just so that people could play games against each other, but it had a nascent marketplace where people were downloading content, and we thought, and we interviewed, our own customers, and we had an insight in that process, and it was by talking to the girlfriends or spouses or partners who, unanimously said, I love my, boyfriend, and I accept him as a gamer. I just wish there was something I could do with him, sometime on this device. And, we sort of got the insight that watching movies, watching television through the device might be one of those. And so we launched a campaign of date night to put the marketplace in place to download TV shows and movies, and we went about and were able to sign an exclusive deal with Reed Hastings at Netflix when it wasn't what it is today, and they were trying to grow, and we had 30 million people on our platform, and we got an exclusive to be able to stream Netflix as part of our Gold membership. So we then just opened up the aperture, not only in the gaming experiences, and we did launch Xbox Live Arcade, which included more games like Pac-Man and Luxor that were arcade-based, that were more family-friendly, but it really was beginning to move towards streaming content, exclusive content in some cases, and then changing the way that people viewed the thing, not just as a game device, but as a full entertainment platform. I'll stop there.
So always consider the boyfriend or girlfriend when you're marketing a product.
From my perspective, let me try to give you a little bit of the history. In 2004, Kaspersky was a company and a technology that was really, in the United States and in many parts of the world, only known by people within the industry. They didn't have large market presence. They didn't have very large market awareness at all, even though they were profitable in their domestic market, which was the Russian Federation. But those in the industry knew that from a technology point of view, that it was really great technology and really could stand up and actually prove to be a better solution than the existing better-known companies such as Symantec, such as McAfee, even companies such as Trend Micro. So in 2004, when I agreed to launch the company in the United States, I knew that the one important thing that the company had was something I didn't have to worry about, which was a very viable, fully baked product. Make customers happy and end users happy. The issue was, how do you an unknown company into a very, very crowded market which was really dominated by two major players, which was McAfee and Symantec, and make a difference and be able to do it successfully. There were really two strategies, one for the corporate market, the business market, and the other one for the consumer market. So I'll just quickly try to address the strategy for each one. And it really came about recognizing the weaknesses of the competition. In the case of McAfee and Symantec, very, very large public companies. And as a result, if you're in a market that's pretty much saturated, everybody's got internet security, everybody's got antivirus. And if you're one of these large companies that has 35% market share, you're really not going to be able to get another 5 points of market share. There just isn't any more market share to have. So the way that these companies were increasing their bottom line revenue was by making more money for the company on each sale than for their partners or their distributors. And over a 3 or 4 year period, they really became very antagonistic and unfriendly towards the people who were reselling their product, distribution, channels, taking deals direct when a partner might have done the deal originally. So from the corporate point of view, we went in and created a business model that actually made it more profitable for them to sell Kaspersky than it was to sell any of the more established competitors. It took a while to get there, but from about 2009 on, the most respected the most respected channel organization in the publication is called Computer Reseller News, and Kaspersky won awards about 5 years in a row as being the best partner. It was really a case of a business model, having a really good product, but also putting the incentive out there that they can make more money selling it than competition. That's what happened on the business-to-business side. And I will say that, let me come back to that. On the consumer side, retail was a bit of a tougher nut to crack because shelf space was very, very limited. Retailers were giving more and more real estate to big screen TVs. So that was very, very hard to crack. But what had happened was that the security industry in the consumer market had really become a commodity. There was really no difference in most consumers' mind between one product or 5 others, that they all did the same thing because the technologies were so similar. But the fact of the matter is that at Kaspersky, we actually had much better, we really had a better product. It really protected people better. It came out in all the tests better. And so what we did is we went to the retailers and we told them that there's a technologically astute customer out there that understands that these types of solutions aren't a commodity. And they were looking for something that was better than the $39 or $49 antivirus or internet security product. So what we did is we went in and we said, we have a premium product. We're actually going to come in and undercut the competition for price, but we went in at price points about 35 to 40% higher. And it worked. We addressed it to the technologically astute market. The retailers made more money off the product because they would rather sell a product that was $79 than $39. And that sort of steamrolled over the years to the fact that up until NPD, which was tracking retail sales, as long as they were tracking security as a category through 2013, we were the number one, Kaspersky was the number one retail product consumer. So I'll stop there.
Wow, it's fascinating. So Steve and Jeff, going off Steve's point right now, we do have a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, and a lot of them do have products that they would say are better than the existing products on the marketplace. But what do they do to get noticed by customers when they don't have the branding or the market penetration of companies like Kaspersky or Microsoft?
Well, I'll start. I would say that one thing that the title of this webinar is Launching Your Startup Internationally. And prior to working with Kaspersky, I've also started companies with companies and also some Israeli companies. And what I can tell you is that in each one of these cases, the initial strategy for all of these companies to take their product and launch it or try to build presence outside of their domestic market, one thing they all did was take their domestic talent, either relocate them to another area where they were trying to establish, or run it remotely from their domestic market. And in each case, it didn't work. And it really was the second or third try when they came to realize that you really have to have local knowledge. You really have to have people who understand the different markets. And it's really so different. It's not just Eastern Europe versus the United States. It's Germany versus France. It's the UK versus the Middle East. So one advice I would give to anybody thinking about expanding their startup internationally is really bring people on, be it in an advisory capacity or a full-time capacity, who understand the local markets that you're trying to get into, as opposed to assuming that the go-to-market strategies are really cookie cutter in each country, which they really
Yeah, I would like to second that. I think that, overall the advice that I give to any entrepreneur is the incredible tension between the following advice. You need to be very, very focused, and you need to be very, very flexible. It seems like that's inconsistent, but let me explain what I mean. I'm a big believer in not reinventing things that are pretty profoundly impactful. Marketing is generally taught by discussing the 4 Ps: product, price, promotion, and placement. And if you have something that is working domestically that you now wish to bring into another market, you need to examine each of those 4 elements very carefully in the context of this new market, because as Steve is correctly pointing out, not all of them are alike. When you have the product, you're solving a problem if it's succeeding. Understand very clearly what that problem is, but then you need to pressure test whether that same problem exists in the same way in your new market. And then you may also need to be flexible enough to understand that when you go into the market, people may pay you for a different reason. They see your product differently than you've seen it initially. The second part for me is price, and Steve talked about using price. The pricing is critical, and you have to just decide, are you going to be at a premium, at parity, or at a discount to your present competition. And a lot of that has to do with your business model. Is it predicated on higher market share or lower market share? And again, it just depends on what type of business that you're operating at. Placement's the other one that Steve touched upon, and I'd like to second that. I mean, if you're going to be distributing online, then don't be naive. It seems like it's lower cost and it might be easier in some way, but you're still battling for shelf space, no differently than if you're working with a retail distribution organization. And I don't want to belabor, how important that can be if that is the means by which you're going to be reaching consumers. But Steve touched upon the single greatest insight. If you get the retailer to believe that they're going to make more money selling your products in their channel, then they will do it. And they will do it gladly, welcome you with open arms if in fact it succeeds. Being focused upon their margin and their incremental volume is critical. take that same mindset and put it online. You're going to be fighting for attention. It's not easy nor free to acquire customers' attention online, but you need to have a thoughtful way of going about. Either word of mouth is very popular online. It's just easy to say and not easy to do. But being able to create buzz, being able to get attention, being able to use public relations, being able to use the social media to get attention, those things can be very cost effective, but they also are not easy. They're not truly free in that regard. And then the last one is, that I've kind of touched upon was promotion, and that just again is being a great storyteller. You know, marketing is telling the same story over and over again, and never the same way twice. You need to know, again, what problem you're solving, what is the conflict that is existing, and then how do you bring the solution against that conflict, and how do you tell that story. Being able to make it easy, memorable, impactful is absolutely critical as you go into a new market. So focused on those things, but here's the key about flexibility. Adapting when you learn what people will pay you and why they're paying you. It may not be what you originally intended, but for goodness sakes, don't be arrogant and don't be pig-headed. Go where the money is. That's the key as you begin to move from your home market into new markets.
Now, can I just add a couple of things as Jeff was talking? I thought of a couple of other pieces of advice. And this particular one came to mind because of a discussion I had with a startup company here in the United States. And basically, their go-to-market strategy was, well, you know, we're going to do two things. We're going to go directly to end users and the channel and sell our branded product. And at the same time, we're going to license our technology to be embedded in other people's products or applications, et cetera, et cetera. So my advice was, you got to pick one or the other. You know, don't try to boil the ocean as far as your routes to market if you are indeed a startup trying to establish space in a market. You try and do too much at once. It's much easier to be successful in one area as opposed to diluting the bandwidth and trying to do everything at once. I just want to add that point.
Absolutely. I mean, we see some great examples of that in companies like Nest, who have done a great job of perfecting one product and then moving on to the next. I mean, I think they really embody that Japanese concept of shabui, of elegant simplicity. But I'd like to go back to one previous point, and one thing that I've always noticed about both you, and both Steve and Jeff, is that you guys mentioned your team, and the importance of hiring the right people. So I have to ask, what do you look for in new team members when you're building up your company?
Well, let me start up, and I'll answer that a little bit differently. You know, I want to make sure that everybody understands that when people, professional money, invest, either whether it's venture capital or it's private equity, they truly are investing in the entrepreneur. To a greater extent, the entrepreneur; to a lesser but also important extent, the management team of the company. And they're looking for someone who is extraordinarily bright, that, you know, clearly has a grasp over an expertise in the given product or service, but they're also looking for someone who has four qualities. I mentioned intelligence. The second one is constitution. The third is charisma, and the last one is compassion. And I put those in that order. So they have to be expert at what they do. But let me talk about constitution. It's really important when I look at an entrepreneur that if they get knocked down, then how are they going to respond? Okay, if they face an early defeat or a disappointment, how are they going to react? And again, I've only had one washout, and it was in many ways explained by the fact that when things started getting tough, the entrepreneur dug in and was increasingly adamant that the market was stupid, the consumers were stupid, that he was still right, and that, you know, he would triumph by simply, you know, being, you know, more and more committed to his original vision. In every other case, whether it's driver side or another company we exited, Embrace Pet Health Insurance, the entrepreneur's ability to believe in their core value proposition, but then receive the feedback from the market and to be able to adapt and respond. As an example, Embrace Pet Health Insurance, the CEO Laura Bennett, that is, the insight there is if you go to the veterinarian and your animal dog or cat has been injured or is ill, you have a very unpleasant conversation that may run into the thousands of dollars. And for the average American household, they haven't set aside $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 to be able to save a beloved pet. Pet health insurance addresses that concern. So in many ways, it's catastrophic health insurance. Along the way, however, they found that people were interested in having a wellness program, and they were willing to spend more money to be able to take their pet in for one checkup a year. And when I say spend more money, a visit might be $50. They were willing to spend $10 more per month. Well, everybody can do the math on that value proposition. In response to that, they launched it. They were the only ones with it. It made them not only gain margin, but they gained tremendous market share against the competition in the space. And again, just flexibility, feedback, and adaptability was absolutely critical. So that to me is a quality for an entrepreneur, an entrepreneurial team, and even, quite frankly, the same thing I would say just in finding good quality employees in a larger organization. And I'll stop there.
I think building the initial team is very challenging because if you think about, let's say, the four major organizations or team members that you need. You need the CEO. You need somebody to head up and build a marketing organization. You need the technology. You need the CTO, and you need a finance person. So you need those four beachheads, so to speak, from which to build upon. And what I've seen, there's generally two situations with startups. Number one is everybody is, and this is, I think, the rarity. This is the uncommon, that there's four people who are in it together, and they're all they're overhired. They're way too qualified based on their experience to work for a startup. And they're really coming on board, not for what the company is today, but how they're going to build the company and what it's going to look like in 3 to 5 years. And obviously, they're doing it for some sort of equity stake in the company. So that's one scenario. I think the more common scenario is the entrepreneur who needs to find people who are willing to work for a startup, have the energy, have the domain experience, et cetera, and has the energy to do that. One thing that I found, and this is, to me, is very, very difficult and challenging for any entrepreneur, is to understand that it may be a case where the people you bring on board initially to head up certain functions are totally appropriate, and the best person to wear 3 hats, that your chief sales officer is also your best salesperson, your CMO is your best lead generation person, et cetera, But it gets to a point that those are the great people that bring the company from 0 to 10 million to 20 million. But realizing at what point can that person scale. And what I've seen in many, many companies is people who are really good at startup and really good at this entrepreneurial management. When it comes to really running a business, which includes more focus on profitability, human resources, things of that nature, that the entrepreneur has to understand that there may come a place in time where these people who actually helped you grow the company might not be the best people to maintain in that position. I'm not saying that you fire the person, but I'm saying that you need to be aware that you might have to prepare some of those people that they would have other roles in the company as the company grows. And I just think it's really an awareness thing, and I've just seen a lot of companies fail. They get to a certain point, where they're just not able to upgrade the talent.
Very good points. And jumping off from that, Jeff, you mentioned that investors often look at the character of the team members when they're looking at making an investment. So I have to ask, what this one's going to be a doozy of a question. What should an entrepreneur take into consideration when they're looking to raise funding? And secondly, does it help for, let's say, a Russian entrepreneur to base himself in the States when he's looking to attract capital from an American investor?
So, you know, I'll take that. The answer is, when you're trying to raise money, again, it's all about telling the story. It is very much about selling oneself, and at least for startups. And you know, having a track record, you know, back home, that's fantastic. And then I will say, the old adage, possession is 9/10 of the law. You're clearly, if you're taking a fundraising, you know, junket, you're going to have to be in Silicon Valley, New York, or Philadelphia. There's, you know, a lesser group in Ohio or in Chicago, some in Denver. But yeah, you're going to have to physically meet with them. People tend to not invest by afar. And then, you know, if you're not going to do it personally, if you're not going to come into the market and oversee the expansion, they're going to want to know who is. And I will say it's an uphill battle to say, you know, this is my company, this is my vision, this is the success I've had, I want to come to the United States and succeed. And one of the use of funds when you give me money is I'm going to then hire someone to run it for me here. That's a problem. I'm not going to lie to you. That's a big leap. Okay, so the degree to which you can already have in place, you know, who is going to be there and have them with you as you're looking to raise funds. Again, back to the same premise. They can love you, but they also need to love the person that they're going to be meeting with much more regularly or receiving updates from in terms of the progress for the business, if it is going to be expanding into the United States. Conversely, if you have a business that you're trying to raise money in the United States to expand into other markets, again, they are investing in people as much as they are investing in the idea, and they want to make sure that it is, you know, that when the going gets tough, that, you know, they don't get lost, that, you know, there's a resilience and there is a commitment, you know, to adapt, to listen. And then that's the last thing I would say. When you're raising money, if you're after dumb money, then you should stick with your friends and family. But if you're going for professional money, then you also have to hold them to a higher standard. You really don't want a check. I mean, as strange as that sounds, you really want to have money that then brings along with it a network of connections, of relationships to help with business development. Sometimes it's the technical expertise. You know, a lot of these venture capital firms, certainly the largest ones, they have people that have been entrepreneurs themselves. They have expertise vis-a-vis engineering and software development in different areas. And then with that same expertise comes their network from a business development standpoint. So it's a two-way street. Make sure that your story is clear, that your team is clear, the way that you're going to bring the business forward, either into the United States or into other markets. And then also have a good reason why you're talking to them. And that's another way of saying what I just said about dumb money. It's kind of like advice that's given to students when they apply to a college or university. Don't just submit an application. They're going to be more likely to accept you if you tell them why you want to go to that school specifically. In the same way, have some thought behind. Don't just go because they took the meeting. I'm coming to speak with you because you have invested in and exited successfully grown businesses that are similar to mine, and I want to work with this partner to be able to expand my business. That is, it may sound like it's brown-nosing, but that is a thoughtful and clear and compelling way to get funded in the venture space.
You know, I'm about 1,000% in agreement with just about everything. In fact, everything that Jeff said. I don't really have a lot to add. I think it was very well spoken. The only thing I might add is again, as Jeff said, it's a two-way street. They're looking at you, but you're also looking at them. And when possible, before you take a meeting, just be aware of what the track record of that particular potential investor is. When I say track record, I'm not necessarily just talking about successes. I'm really talking about track record. Are they the type of company who historically has come in and majority of the board seats is really micromanaging according to their agenda and their understanding of the market, as opposed to really putting the trust in the team members to go to market first. It's like getting married. You don't want to get married, and it's nice to get married to beautiful people. You know, he's handsome, she's beautiful, but if they're not on the same page, it's not going to work out in the end. So just really be careful about that type of mutual understanding and agreement, and that this is the type of company historically who does work with their portfolio companies that way, as opposed to, you know, some capitalists are, you know, they're like mortgage companies. They'll come in, they just want to flip the company in a couple of years. So just be aware of that.
Well, excellent points. I think we have some very big questions coming in from our chat, but unfortunately we only have a few minutes left. So I'd love to save those questions for after the webinar itself. And I would like to ask just a more personal question to Jeff and Steve. Both of you have probably been through some challenging times when growing your ventures and businesses. What really keeps you balanced and reassured that what you're doing is going to work and going to make an impact?
Well, I think the proof is in the results, and I think sometimes things that, from a personal standpoint, there are two things that keep you going. Okay, one is the sort of gratification of doing something that's successful, and it could be any number of things. It's, you know, gaining market share. It's getting that big round of funding. It's getting that recognition within the community. Yeah, that obviously is gratifying. Conversely, from a personal standpoint, when things don't go well and something that I planned to do didn't work out as expected, or that I thought would be successful wasn't successful, personally that motivates me more, because I get ticked off about it and say, okay, well, what am I going to do to fix that so that it doesn't happen? And sometimes failures, I think, can energize people, you know, more than successes. You know, clearly nobody expects to be successful 100% of the time, but understand that failures aren't necessarily things to get depressed about. They're things that can actually motivate you.
For me, I mean, it may sound like a cliche, but you've got to be focused on the journey, not on the destination. You know, I'm a big proponent of having clear milestones and commitments, and you need to meet them. But what you're going to find is that balance and sanity are really very highly correlated with the journey itself. It's the doing, it's not what's done. And you know, by that, I mean that you have to be focused on the things that you can control and not try and influence things that you cannot control. You know, when you succeed, people respond to that, and you have no idea how they're going to respond to it. They can innovate, they can change pricing, they can, you know, do what you least would expect for them to do, even when you do your wargaming. And truth be told, that's okay. Okay, you can't control everything. You can just control what you can control. And to me, that's how you maintain your sanity and your balance. And it doesn't hurt if you have some loving relationships in your life too, fully supportive and on board with what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I think those are some terrific answers that we've gotten from our presenters today. And I know I promised them that we'd have a hard stop at 8:45 a.m. seeing as how they have flights and other meetings to attend to. So on behalf of the people on the webinar, I'd like to thank Jeff and Steve for sharing their insights and wisdom with us. And if we have any further questions, would you two be open to answering offline?
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Hey, thank you very much, guys, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'll stick around for the next few minutes if you have any questions for me. But otherwise, yes, look forward to a post-webinar little bit of information coming out from RVC and RUSSOFT. Thank you very much again, guys.